Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something really interesting, sent in by a listener, actually.
Oh, yeah. What do we got?
It's some source material, an article called Why Smart People Believe Stupid Things, from a collection called The Perils of Clever Delusion.
Wow, okay. That title definitely grabs you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Sort of challenges a basic assumption.
it really does. And that's our mission today, to unpack this. Well, this paradox. We usually think intelligence, protects us from errors, helps us find truth.
Right, like a shield.
Exactly. But what if it doesn't always work that way? What if sometimes being smart actually makes us better at holding on to beliefs that aren't true?
So why does that happen? And I guess, is there anything we can do about it?
That's what we're digging into.
Okay, so the core argument in this material, it's pretty stark then.
It is. It basically says intelligence isn't like a guaranteed path to truth. It can even boost our ability to rationalize, to hold on to illusions.
It feels completely backwards, doesn't
Yes.
it? My first thought is smarter people should be less likely to fall for things.
Mine too. But this is just the opposite can happen. The smarter you are, maybe the better you are at building these really elaborate defenses around ideas that feel good, emotionally speaking.
Even if the facts don't line up.
Yeah, even then. So think of intelligence less like this pure truth detector.
And more like a really powerful tool.
Exactly, a tool you can aim anywhere, including using it to justify what you already feel or believe deep down.
So it's not about raw brain power, but how that power gets directed.
Precisely. And the material dives into how this works. It talks about something called motivated reasoning.
Ah, right. Motivated reasoning. I've come across that. The idea that we often reason backwards, basically.
Yeah, you start with the conclusion you want, the one that feels right, and then you use your smarts to find evidence that supports it.
Instead of starting with the evidence and seeing where it leads.
Exactly. And the key point here is that really intelligent people might not necessarily think better in terms of finding objective truth.
But they justify better. They're more skilled at building that case for what they already believe.
Yeah, like when their beliefs get challenged, they don't act like a neutral scientist. It's more like...
Like a lawyer, defending their client at all costs.
That's a great analogy. They use their intellect to find loopholes, spin the data, build complex arguments just to protect that pre-existing belief.
Regardless of whether it holds water objectively.
And there's a really interesting brain science bit in here, too. It mentions a 2006 experiment.
Oh, yeah. What did they find?
They found dopamine activity, the reward chemical in people's brains when they were successfully rationalizing contradictions about political candidates they liked.
No way. So finding a way to excuse the flaws, to make it all make sense in your head, that actually feels good. Physically.
Apparently so. The brain gives you a little dopamine hit, a reward for smoothing over that cognitive dissonance.
Wow. Okay, so rationalizing is actually rewarding.
Which leads to this concept the material calls intellectual addiction.
Intellectual addiction, right? Connect the dots for me. Dopamine reward, intelligence.
Well, if finding those justifications feels good, and if you're really good at finding them because you're smart...
You might do it more often and get better at it.
Exactly. You build these increasingly complex, satisfying stories in your head to protect your beliefs. Your intelligence makes you super effective at self-deception, potentially making those beliefs even more rigid.
So your own smarts can dig you deeper into a hole, in a way.
That seems to be the idea. And it's fascinating because this isn't just, a recent discovery from neuroscience.
Well,
the material points out that the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche basically saw this coming centuries ago.
Nietzsche. Really? How so?
Well, he had these incredibly sharp insights into human psychology. He seemed to view self-deception as almost our default mode, not just an occasional slip-up.
That sounds like Nietzsche. Never one to sugarcoat.
Definitely not. There are a couple of quotes here that really hit home. First one, the most common lie is that which one lies to oneself.
Straight to the point. It's everywhere, that kind of self-lie.
And then there's this other one, maybe even more powerful. Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies.
Okay, unpack that. Why more dangerous?
Well, think about it. A straightforward lie someone tells you, you can maybe disprove it with facts, right?
Yeah, potentially.
But a conviction, something you deeply believe, something that's part of your identity.
Yeah.
That's much harder to root out, even if it's based on something false. It feels true on a gut level.
It's woven into who you are.
Exactly. And Nietzsche argued that we often use our intelligence precisely for that, to protect those convictions, protect our identity, our status, our tribe.
Rather than using it to neutrally seek out inconvenient truths.
Right. It becomes a defense mechanism for the self, for the group.
And the source material gives examples of this in action.
It does. Really compelling ones, like Linus Pauling. Huge scientific mind, right? 2 Nobel Prizes.
Yeah, giant in his field.
But the article mentions how he clung to an incorrect model for DNA for a while, even after Watson and Crick had the right structure.
So why?
The suggestion isn't that he was suddenly dumb, but maybe his ego, his attachment to his own idea, made him resistant. His brilliance might have actually helped him rationalize away the conflicting evidence for longer.
Makes you think. What other examples?
There's the tragic story of Ignaz Semmelweis.
Ah, the hand-washing guy.
That's him. He showed clear proof that doctors washing their hands drastically cut deaths in maternity wards. Simple, clear evidence.
But the medical community, the experts, they resisted.
Massively. The material calls it tribal investment. Accepting Semmelweis meant admitting that these respected doctors were causing harm, their established practices, their group identity. It just overrode the facts.
Even life-saving facts. Wow.
And it brings it right up to today, too. Discusses debates like, climate science or economic policies like rent control.
Okay, careful ground here.
Right. And the point isn't to take sides on those issues. It's using them as examples of how highly educated people on all sides often seem to use their smarts.
And defend the team view.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
To build really sophisticated arguments that align with their group, rather than maybe dispassionately following the data wherever it leads. It's motivated reasoning on a grand scale.
That tribal aspect seems absolutely crucial then.
It does. And again, Nietzsche pops up. There's that quote, "Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, peoples, and ages, it is the rule."
Oof. Madness is the rule in groups. That's
Right.
bleak.
It sounds harsh, yeah. But the explanation is about us being fundamentally social animals. Our beliefs, they're not just ideas in our heads. They're like...
Social glue.
Yeah, exactly. They bind us together. So challenging a core belief of your group, it doesn't just feel like an intellectual disagreement. It can feel like a threat to your belonging, like an existential threat.
And there's brain stuff involved there too, right? The amygdala.
Yes, our threat detector. When our group identity or core beliefs feel attacked, the amygdala can basically hit the panic button and override our rational thinking.
Even in very smart people.
Even then, the need to belong can be incredibly powerful, sometimes more powerful than the drive for objective truth, especially when they clash.
Which brings us to how expertise itself can be tricky.
Right. The material calls it a double-edged sword. Expertise gives you amazing tools for analysis.
Right.
But those same tools can be used to cherry-pick data, to obfuscate with jargon, to defend your status quo, your position in the field.
So you can use your expertise to build walls around dogma instead of exploring new territory.
Exactly, which can lead to stagnation, even in fields like science or medicine that are supposed to be all about progress and questioning.
Okay, so if our own intelligence and expertise can mislead us like this, what's the way out? Did Nietzsche or the material suggest anything?
Yes, the antidote, drawing on Nietzsche again, seems to be intellectual humility.
Humility, okay. What does that look like in practice?
It's described as this willingness to shed one's mental skin like a snake.
Ah, I like that image.
Me too. It means understanding that true intellectual strength isn't about always being right. It's about being willing and able to change your mind when you encounter better evidence or reasoning.
Growth, not rigidity.
Precisely. There's another Nietzsche quote tied to this. "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die."
Meaning, if your ideas can't adapt and evolve?
Your thinking essentially stagnates. It stops engaging with reality.
But being that open, that willing to be wrong, that sounds hard. The material acknowledges that.
Oh, absolutely. It emphasizes the cost of thinking clearly. It can mean facing loneliness if your views diverge from your group. It involves the fear of being wrong, potential marginalization, maybe even deep existential doubt if core beliefs crumble.
So truth-seeking isn't comfortable.
Apparently not. It often requires walking a difficult, less certain path.
All right, so for those of us listening, wanting to be more aware of this in our own lives,
Yeah.
are there practical tools, strategies?
Yeah, the article offers several good ones. First, recognize motivated reasoning. Basically, Be suspicious when finding something feels really good just because it confirms what you already think.
That little rush of, aha, I knew it.
Yeah, that feeling. It could be a warning sign that you're prioritizing comfort over truth.
Okay, good one. What else?
Second, steelman, opposing arguments. Don't go after the weakest version of the other side's view, the straw man.
Right. Build the strongest possible version of their argument.
Exactly. Try to articulate it so well that they would agree with your summary. If you can't do that, you probably don't really understand it well enough to critique it fairly.
That forces you to really engage.
Okay, third.
Cultivate confident humility. This is great. Be proud not of what you believe right now.
But of your willingness to change your beliefs.
Yes. Your confidence comes from your capacity to learn and adapt, not from clinging rigidly to current ideas. Your identity is tied to the process, not the outcome.
I like that framing. Makes flexibility a strength.
Number 4.
Diversify your information diet. Actively seek out perspectives you disagree with. Regularly.
Make discomfort a habit.
Kind of, yeah. Get used to hearing challenging ideas. Don't just live in an echo chamber.
Makes sense. And the last one.
This one might be the most powerful shift. Shift your internal question. Stop asking yourself, how can I prove I'm right?
And start asking.
Start asking, how might I be wrong?
That simple switch changes everything, doesn't it? It moves you from defense to exploration.
Completely. It turns your intelligence from being that defense attorney into more of a curious scientist, exploring possibilities.
So wrapping this up, the core message isn't being smart is bad.
Not at all. It's more like a call to use that intelligence wisely, with humility.
Because intelligence, without that humility, without that self-awareness, can actually become a barrier to seeing clearly, a barrier to growth.
Yeah. It's striking how both Nietzsche centuries ago and modern brain science seem to point to the same thing. Often, the biggest obstacle to finding truth isn't out there somewhere.
It's in here. Inside ourselves, our biases, our ego, our need to belong.
Definitely leaves you with a lot to chew on. And that final Nietzsche quote the material uses is quite something.
Which one was that?
To become what one is, one must not have the faintest idea what one is.
Wow. Yeah, that's a deep one. Suggests maybe real self-discovery requires letting go of all the ideas we have about ourselves, especially the ones our clever minds build up to protect us.
So we've gone through quite a journey here. The paradox of smarts and self-deception, the why behind it, the brain science, the social stuff.
The historical echoes with Nietzsche, those real-world examples, and importantly, some concrete things we can try to do about it.
Hopefully this gives you, our listeners, some useful things to think about, maybe some tools to apply in your own thinking.
It's certainly given me food for thought.
Me too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.